Gypsy Tales, Story Number 3. The Gypsy Who Outsmarted the Devil. In Moravia, many years ago, there once lived a gypsy who had saved enough money to buy a plot of land. Unlike other gypsies, he did not care for the wanderer's life. He did not enjoy moving from campsite to campsite and from town to town. All he really wanted to do was to settle down in the country with his pretty young wife and to farm some land. Finding the right farm, however, was not easy. Usually the land was too expensive, or the soil was too rocky and dry, or there was insufficient grazing land. He had searched for nearly a year and used up a part of his savings when, quite unexpectedly, he came across a plot of land that appeared to have all the qualities for which he was searching. When he asked who owned the land, he was surprised to learn that it belonged to the town. This puzzled him. He could not understand why the three farmers whose land adjoined this particular plot had never purchased it. At the same time, this information also pleased him because he knew that it would be much easier and less expensive to obtain land from the municipality than from a farmer. A farmer might be anxious to make a profit. Thus he went to town to speak with the mayor. The gypsy was completely taken aback when he was told that he would be able to buy the land for a mere 2 ducats. "How can that be?" asked the gypsy. "My dear man," said the mayor severely, "in all fairness, I must tell you and warn you before you purchase this particular plot that the reason it is so inexpensive is very simple. Nothing will grow on it. Many a farmer has spent days, even weeks, tilling the soil and planting all sorts of crops. But nothing, not even grass, will grow on it." "That is most curious," said the gypsy, shaking his head, "because I know enough about land to know that the soil is really quite good. Perhaps all the others have missed some trick." "I doubt that," answered the mayor, "but if you still want to buy it, go ahead. But I must warn you that I will not refund any money to you." Soon the necessary papers were drawn up and signed by both parties, and the gypsy proudly returned to his land. So interested was he in building his house as soon as possible, he immediately took a shovel and began to dig. Before he was a foot into the earth, a man dressed in a brilliant red coat was suddenly standing before him. "You cannot dig here," the stranger said in an angry voice. "This land belongs to us." "You must be mistaken," replied the gypsy, and from his pocket he pulled out the deed that proved his ownership. "I'm not in the least bit interested in whether or not the mayor sold this plot to you," replied the stranger. "Let me introduce myself. I am the devil. I tell you with all the authority that I command that this land belongs to me and my companions." "Even if you are the devil," replied the gypsy, quite unafraid, for he knew that the devil could do no harm to him, "this land belongs to me. I've spent hard-earned money for it, and I intend to build my house here and farm the land." "Look here," said the devil, who now realized that the gypsy was not going to be intimidated. "Once a week we come out to play and to have fun. This isn't a good place for you or for any mortal being to live. I can assure you the noises we would make would be unbearable for you to listen to, and you and your wife and children would be most unhappy." "I'll take my chances," said the gypsy indifferently. "That will never do," replied the devil. "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pay you the money you have spent for this place. That way you can look for a more suitable place to farm." "That isn't good enough," replied the gypsy. "I have looked everywhere and I haven't been able to find a place for the money I'm able to spend. If you want me to sell this place to you, you'll have to pay me much more." "All right," agreed the devil. "How much do you want?" "A capful of gold coins," said the gypsy. "That's too much," said the devil. "Well then," said the gypsy with a grin on his face, "you give me no choice but to continue my work." He picked up his shovel and started digging again. "Stop, stop!" shouted the devil. "I'll get you the money, but I have to go down below where we keep it." When the devil left, the gypsy thought the matter over. He knew that devils were rich. Why settle for so little, he asked himself. Indeed, why settle for such a paltry sum? Then he thought of a clever plan. He took his shovel and dug a deep but narrow hole in the ground. Next, he took his cap and made a slit in it. Then he placed the cap over the hole and awaited the return of the devil. The strange creature arrived soon enough, carrying a medium-sized satchel in his hand. He poured the coins into the cap, and they, of course, just slipped through the slit into the hole beneath. "What a trickster you are!" the gypsy shouted at the devil in an irritated voice. "Do you really think you can perform magic and get away with it? Did you think that I would settle for coins that you can make disappear?" "What are you talking about?" asked the devil, who was very confused. "Well, just look at the cap," said the gypsy. "There isn't a single coin in it." "I don't know how that happened," replied the devil, completely bewildered, "because I assure you that I did exactly what you asked me to do." "Well, I gave you your chance," replied the gypsy, "and now I see that you cannot be trusted. I'll just have to go ahead and build my house." "Don't do that," pleaded the devil. "Just give me a few more minutes and I'll be back with more coins." About 15 minutes later he returned carrying a large sack. From it he poured and he poured, but the cap was still empty. "I can't understand it," said the devil, looking at the gypsy with great disgust and mistrust. "You look like a normal man. Your head doesn't appear to be so large that your cap could hold a full satchel of coins, plus half of another sack." "Well, that's where you're wrong," laughed the gypsy. "I've more brains than you can imagine, and my head is much larger than you might think." The devil looked at the gypsy again and could only shake his head in disbelief. But since he could find no answer, he kept pouring the coins into the cap. At last the cap was nearly full and the devil's bag was nearly empty. "That's that," said the devil. "You now have the money you asked for." And he disappeared as mysteriously as he had arrived. The gypsy waited for a few minutes just to make sure that his unearthly visitor would not reappear. Then he uncovered the hole, loaded the coins onto a wheelbarrow, and rushed off as fast as he could. With all the money he now owned, he had no trouble finding a nice farm. But because he had never before had so much money, he did not realize how quickly one could spend it all. Thus, late one summer day, less than 2 years after his encounter with the devil, he was shocked and surprised to discover that he had only a few ducats left. Believing that he would be rich for many more years, he had not planted any crops. Now it was too late to make the farm productive. He realized that he was in grave trouble and that very soon there would not be enough money to buy even a loaf of bread. All that day and the next as well, he sat in his rocking chair trying to find a way out of this bad situation. Then at last he thought of a plan. He decided to take a chance and go back to where the devil lived and attempt to trick him once more. As soon as he reached the old plot, he took a pickaxe from his shoulder and started to dig. Within seconds, the same devil appeared before him. "So, it's you again!" screamed the devil. "That was a nasty trick you played on me the last time. I found the hole you made in the ground and over which you had placed the cap. Believe me, I've been waiting for you these last 2 years. And now that you're in my power, you'll have to pay for your trickery." "I don't know what you plan to do," the gypsy replied very calmly. "But if you plan to fight with me, let me warn you that I'm very strong. If you dare even to touch me, I'll tear this place apart." "I don't believe you," said the devil. "All right then," retorted the gypsy. "Can you squeeze water out of this stone?" He handed the devil a hard white stone. The devil squeezed and squeezed, but did not succeed in obtaining even a single drop of liquid. "You're pretty weak," said the gypsy. "Give me the stone and I'll show you what I can do." Once the gypsy had the stone, he exchanged it for a handful of curds. He did this so expertly that the devil didn't notice a thing. Then the gypsy squeezed the curds and water oozed from his hand. When the devil saw this, he became terribly frightened and his knees knocked together in terror. He feared that he had indeed met his master. The gypsy knew that he was now in a strong position and could make a bargain. "Let me tell you," said he, "I'm so annoyed with your behavior that I'll tear up this piece of land just to show you that you can neither threaten me nor talk to me in the way you just did." "Don't do that! Don't do that!" begged the devil, who was afraid of what his companions might do to him if their hideout was destroyed. "Can't we agree to some arrangement?" he asked hopefully in a weak and pleading voice. "No," growled the gypsy, now playing his role for all it was worth. "I think you deserve to be taught a lesson." And he picked up a big shovel. "Wait a minute, please," croaked the devil. "Please, just wait. I'll give you another sack of gold if you'll just promise to leave us alone." "What?" shouted the gypsy. "Another measly little sack? Another little sack like the one you gave me the last time?" "No," replied the devil. "I'll bring you one that's as big as I am." The gypsy raised his head and slowly looked the devil over. "Well, you're a stout fellow," he said, scratching his head. "All right then, just to show you what a good person I really am, I'll make this bargain with you. But I warn you, devil, don't fool with me again." "I'll be right back," said the devil. And true enough, the devil returned within 15 minutes. On his back was a sack so big and so heavy that even this powerfully built creature could do no better than stagger along and practically collapse under the heavy weight. "There you are," said the devil, dumping the sack at the gypsy's feet. But the gypsy said nothing. He knew that he would never be able to lift the sack. At the same time, he also knew that he could not admit this to the devil without revealing his own weaknesses. "I've no intention of carrying this heavy sack," said the gypsy at last. "I expect you to bring it to my house." Hearing this, the devil became enraged, as he was in no mood to carry such a heavy load for any great distance. "All right then," said the gypsy when he saw that the devil was hesitating. "Our deal is off. I'll just amuse myself by breaking up your hiding place. That's what I came here to do in the first place." "No, no, don't do that," panted the devil. He was still out of breath. "I'll do as you ask." He picked up the sack and the gypsy led him toward his farm. After a few hours of walking, they reached the gate of the gypsy's home. The devil dropped the sack and ran off as fast as he could, afraid that the gypsy might ask him to perform some other chores. Of course, the gypsy too was relieved to see the devil depart in such haste. Although he had fooled him, he feared that the creature would suddenly realize that he had been tricked. After having placed the coins in several coffers, the gypsy talked with his wife. The two agreed that this time the money would be put to good use. The very next day, the gypsy went into town and hired several experienced farm hands. Within a few years, his crops were plentiful, and the sale of their crops and fruit afforded them a good living. Never again did the gypsy venture near the place where the devils lived, for he understood that he had been extremely lucky. He knew that there was no sense in tempting fate a third time. End of story number 3.